Let's bring in Eric Engels now from Sportsnet Montreal, because there's all kinds of offshoots on this. How you doing, Eric? Happy Tuesday.
I'm doing good. Michael Hakkarainen.
Michael Hakkarainen. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Close enough. Close enough.
Nowhere near $7 million a year what the Flower was getting in Vegas. But because he's a Quebec kid, Eric, would you please give me your take on this trade?
I just think this is the Golden Knights conducting a ruthless bit of business, and it's not about trading Marc-Andre Fleury. I think that was the decision that they were going to make, especially the day that they acquired Robin Lehner. I mean, that the writing was on the wall for that. But for Fleury to find out on Twitter, for no one from the Golden Knights to reach out to him and tell him what was going down in the situation, you know, I understand it's a business. All players understand it's a business. But when you conduct business that cold-heartedly and ruthlessly, your other players are going to, it's going to resonate with them, and it's going to resonate with free agents in the market. And, you know, I don't think Max Pacioretty was a fan of having his name thrown into rumors last year and finding out that the Golden Knights were potentially shopping him after signing him to a 4-year, $28 million deal and making the trade with Montreal. I don't believe that Nate Schmidt was particularly happy about just suddenly being traded to Vancouver after being such a big part of Vegas. And I understand it is a business. We all get that. The players understand that very well. But, you know, there is a certain way to do things. And they decided to bring in Alex Pietrangelo last year and caused a ripple just in moving guys out just to make them, a part of their team. And this with Fleury, who's a future Hall of Famer and the most popular guy in that room, it's not going to play well with the players that are there.
I think you're 100% right, Eric, and wonderful analysis, by the way. There is talk of him retiring. Do you think he ever plays a game in a Chicago uniform?
Well, from my understanding, that talk is related to what he wants to do regarding his family. If he'd like to be away for them for a year to continue his career, if he wants to uproot them and move them out of Vegas, where he had built a home and had no desire of leaving there. You know, it's a really difficult decision, and it would be a terrible thing to see a player of his caliber with the career that he's had kind of be forced out of the game by something like this. I don't know what's going to happen moving forward. I don't know if Chicago will try to facilitate a deal for Fleury to somewhere that's a better destination or a destination more of his choosing where he'd be comfortable potentially moving his family or commuting back and forth to Vegas if he intends to keep his family there. To be honest, anything I could say would be complete speculation because I don't know how Marc-Andre Fleury feels. We just know that Alan Walsh, his agent, put it out there that he's going to contemplate his future and discuss things with his family. If he ends up in Chicago, he makes them a better team. He's the reigning Vezina Trophy winner. He was just traded for virtually nothing, an American Hockey League prospect. It's a very compelling story, and this is my instant reaction to it, but I just think he deserves a lot better than to be told on Twitter.
Eric Engels from Sportsnet Montreal with us. Tremendous analysis again. And again, he's the reigning Vezina Trophy winner. My God, he's not retiring. He's not Seinfeld going out on top here. By the way, James in Borden, Manitoba says, all Vegas fans are waking up to a kick in the teeth. The Knights are ruthless. 4 years in the league, 3 conference final appearances. I'll just put that out there. That's from a Golden Knights fan here. Katie says he got stabbed in the back again. Katie Fleury, she's a Golden Knights fan. And from Brady in Muskoka, Ontario, he says Ovi's re-signed too. 5 years, $47.5 million. We'll unpack all of this, Eric, but because you're the Habs beat guy for Sportsnet, was there ever any chance whatsoever that Carey Price would have been selected by Seattle in the expansion draft? What went into him being left unprotected?
Yeah, for sure there was a chance. The minute that he was unprotected, it was obviously a major discussion within the Seattle group and brain trust to select him. He's a franchise player, a guy that instantly would sell the jerseys and then some to make up for the money that's owed to him on his contract, $44.25 million and an $11 million check that needed to be cut, early in the fall. And a lot of signing bonus money in that contract for the rest of it. And the cap hit is considerable. So there was a lot of risk involved in Seattle potentially taking him for the financial reasons. There was risk involved because of his injury history. But the risk became imminently higher when Seattle wasn't going to have a guarantee of what his injury status was and what his health status was for the upcoming season. You look at the way they made their other selections, it was clear that cap space was going to be at a premium for them in terms of building out their team over the next number of years and not just this next one. So to swallow such a huge hit, what would amount to 13% of the cap, and probably for the next 3-4 years as the cap remains stagnant at $81.5 million, to not know what the extent of Carey Price's injuries were, made it kind of an impossible situation for them. They wanted Montreal to believe all along that they were likely going to take him regardless. They wanted to be able to pluck some sort of asset out of Marc Bergevin to do it. But as you see, Marc Bergevin wasn't the only GM who kind of held strong and decided, I'm not giving Seattle anything other than the player they're going to take from me in this expansion draft. And that started with Jake Allen, and it extended to Carey Price, and he played his cards and played them quite masterfully, I would suggest. And so Carey Price remains a Montreal Canadien, and he got the best news of all late last week, that he's looking at the best case scenario in terms of the knee procedure that he had to undergo, which he underwent, and it was successful. He's looking at a 10 to 12 week recovery and is expected to be prepared to start the next regular season in Montreal. So it was a really fascinating little bit of time. I think the Canadiens were concerned for a little bit. I think Carey Price was concerned for a little bit. But as soon as it got out there that he was having his hip and knee looked at, and we weren't sure, when or he'd be back playing, and Seattle wasn't going to get any confirmation of that, that's basically where it died.
The viewers, not surprisingly, Eric, still hung up on the Marc-Andre Fleury news and moving his family. James in Borden, Manitoba says, Chicago is not exactly a family city. Trish Higgy is watching on Facebook. She says, Chicago is like forced retirement. 37% of our viewers are female, by the way, Moose, in case you forgot. And on Fleury leaving Vegas, Stacy Champagne watching says, so he's leaving on a high note? LOL. Doesn't matter. We'll discuss that. It's still raw. It's still raw today. Speaking of raw, Shea Weber, Eric, how do you go from playing 29 minutes a game in the Stanley Cup final to you're potentially never playing again with these injuries? What was this guy playing through?
Oh, he was playing through a lot, and we know that he was playing through a lot over the last couple of years, whether it was his foot, his ankle, his knee. He's wearing tape around his wrist for the last couple of years. So I don't know how long-term the damage was there. And then to suffer the thumb injury that he suffered towards the end of the season that forced him out of the end of the regular season. And then he comes back, a couple of days before the playoffs started. He wasn't holding a stick with his top hand. And then all of a sudden he's playing upwards of 30 minutes a game, between 25 and 30, and he was leading the playoffs all the way through up until the final, where I think he finished third in ice time. No one seemed to know the full extent of Weber's injuries, because Weber is such a tough guy. He didn't share that information with virtually anyone. He knew, and it seemed clear in the way he played now in retrospect, and the way he gave himself to the team and sacrificed his body, that he was playing all out and doing everything he could to make this last run count for something. And he came as close as you could possibly get. And I don't think anybody was beating that Tampa Bay team. Montreal played excellent hockey to get there, and Shea Weber was a huge part of it. And in the final, where I don't think the Canadiens gave themselves the best chance to win, because they didn't play particularly well through the first couple of games at least, Shea Weber was a standout in terms of the way he played. So he goes out with his head held high. To me, he's a Hall of Famer. He's a champion, despite the fact that he never lifted the Stanley Cup. I think he's been a champion everywhere else, and he has the heart of a champion and leads like a champion. And he will leave behind a wake of culture that the Canadiens should build on for years to come. Understand that might be smudged a bit with what they did at the draft over the last weekend, but the players that are in place that were able to learn from him over this run, I think that's one of the most valuable things that they got. It's one thing to look at Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield and Jesperi Kotkaniemi and Alex Romanov and say, hey, look how far they made it in the playoffs, and that's great for them, and that's great for the Canadiens moving forward. But to me, that's only part of the story. The fact that they did it and had that experience alongside Corey Perry and Eric Stahl and Shea Weber and Carey Price, and go down the list of some of the great players in that Canadiens dressing room, that is going to be the ultimate resonant value for the franchise. So it's really something. And for Shea Weber, much like we're talking about with Marc-Andre Fleury. Here's a player that deserves to go out on his own terms when you look at the way he's played. And I think it's very sad if he can't come back at some point, and it's looking very improbable that he will come back at some point, that he goes out this way, especially after the career he had.
Again, Brady in Muskoka, Ontario, watching. Brady Leovold says, he's a WHL guy. Come on, Rod. Of course he was going to play. I didn't say I didn't expect him to play. I'm saying, what was he going through? My God, he sounds like everything in him was broken. And he's from Sicamous, BC, by the way. So we'll see where the Weber story goes. You know, are the Habs positioned to build off this in your mind, Eric? Like you mentioned some of the free agents. Oh, licorice legs. Kotkaniemi's a free agent, I see. Restricted, I believe. Was this a one and done? Or where are they going from here, Eric, do you think?
Well, they've got a lot of money to spend, $14 million on the cap, but with Weber's contract likely going to long-term IR, and I think that's a formality, even if the NHL needs to decide once he reports to training camp and has a full medical evaluation, once again, to see where rest has brought him to. You know, that's over $21 million to play with in free agency through trade and building out the roster. And I think Marc Bergevin is going to be extremely aggressive, certainly when free agency opens. But as the summer goes along, there's no cap or time limit on him potentially making a trade or two that helps the Canadiens. And they have assets to move. They've got a lot of picks. Only Detroit has made more picks than them over the last 3 years, and now at this draft added more picks than anybody else. They've got young capital, draft prospect ability to get themselves some name players, and I think Marc Bergevin is going to look very intently at that market to do things. Can he solve all the issues all at once? You know, it looks like Phillip Danault is going to reported a few weeks ago, or a couple of weeks ago. I don't know. The time is all blending together now, Rod. Like, I don't remember what day it is. But Phillip Danault is going to explore the market, and he's likely done with the Canadiens. They haven't circled back with him anytime recently, and I don't know if they intend to after 12 o'clock tomorrow once he fields a few official offers. I have to think discussions have already happened. Oh yeah, teams, agents say that, you know, they got to wait, but let's be honest, like, we're seeing the business get conducted in front of our eyes. So I'd imagine Phillip Danault has a pretty good idea of where he might land tomorrow, and I don't think it's going to be Montreal. Thomas Tatar's out the door. Yoel Armia just saw Barclay Goodrow signed for $3.6 million over a 6-year deal with the New York Rangers. Wonder what he's thinking as the market approaches and the call to the market approaches, and whether or not the Canadiens would go as long as 5 or 6 years on Yoel Armia is questionable in my mind. So they're going to have some holes to fill, and it's a good thing they have the money, because there's a lot of players that are available. There's a lot of teams that are strapped against the cap that are looking 2-3 years into the future and thinking about how they're going to maneuver things. And cap space, as Seattle made very clear, is at a premium. It is the most valuable asset you can have in this environment. And I think Marc Bergevin has proven to be a pretty shrewd GM, and he will use it to the best of his ability, but he won't use it just for the sake of using it. You know, I think we saw that over a couple of years leading into this one, that if he doesn't feel the money's worth spending on a specific asset, he won't spend it. So we'll see. It's exciting times. And, you know, for someone who tends to have their finger on the pulse of what's going on with the Canadiens at all times, we're going into something that's a little bit more unpredictable than I'm used to. And maybe it's just because the Canadiens went this deep into the playoffs and we haven't had as much time to make the phone calls and get in touch with everyone to find out exactly what they're up to. Spoken to as many people as possible, but as always, you know, Marc Bergevin likes to say, expect the unexpected, and I'm expecting the unexpected from him.
Yeah. Hey, Ryan H. watching on YouTube says, Eric Engels is on fire. What great analysis. Another one of the reasons I love this show. We got about a minute, Eric. I have to ask you, the Prime Minister admonished the Canadiens today for taking Logan Mailloux with the 31st overall pick. You were probably expecting we'd ask you about it, and here I am. How's the team handling the controversy, the backlash from drafting Mr. Mailloux?
You know, I don't know how they're handling it internally, but I know how I would have thought they should have handled it when they made the pick. If they really wanted to sell it to the public that he was worthy of a second chance, they should have presented an action plan on how he's going to prove that. Because just taking him at his word that he's remorseful for what he did to this young woman, when she has told reporters at other outlets that she feels his apology to her was insincere, that it was a 3-line text that didn't express the gravity of his actions and that he understood them. I think the Canadiens would have been wise if they had decided that they were going to choose this player 31st overall, or really what ended up being the 30th pick because Arizona was docked the pick. They should have come out and said, here are the steps he's going to take to redeem himself. He's going to, for example, meet with victims of similar crimes to the one he committed so that he really understands the gravity of the damage that he did. He's going to take a portion of his entry-level contract and donate them to such causes, to combat, sexual abuse or privacy infringement and stuff like that. And we're going to match his donation. We're going to bring him along in these group therapy sessions. We're going to teach him a certain way. And if he doesn't prove that he's worthy of that second chance that we're going out on a limb and giving him, we're going to renounce him. So, I think that was a way to sell it from a public relations standpoint. It's clear that they made a decision that was purely hockey-based, and they felt that just in speaking to the player and hearing that he's remorseful, that they felt that was enough to offer him a second chance. And I think that's why the backlash is there, and it's virulent, and it's enormous. And I think there was ways to potentially avoid it. And you know what, guys? Let's be honest. I'm all for second chances. I'm not about canceling people outright. I'm about nurturing them and finding that to getting them to find a way to find them their best selves moving forward. But remorseful, that is the bare minimum you expect from someone who commits a crime and does something that violates someone's privacy the way he did. So I understand the backlash, and the Canadiens brought that on themselves. And given that they haven't presented an action plan, their next opportunity to speak on this issue would be to do exactly that. And I think that should be in the works, and it should be presented quickly if they want to get out from under this, because he's going to face those questions moving forward for every day that he's a Montreal Canadien. And they're going to face it too until they address that issue and find a way to explain why this kid is actually worth a second chance beyond him saying he's remorseful.
Very well said. Eric, thank you so much. Love your stuff. Enjoy what's left of summer. Hopefully you get a break in August, and I appreciate the time.
Thanks very much, Rod. Take care.
Eric Engels from Sportsnet Montreal with a vast Canadiens update. A fantastic one.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.